Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here again with another guest. And today I'm here with Susan Schwartz. Say hello, Susan, for people who are listening and not watching.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm so glad to have you on. Susan is located in Arizona, and Susan is a psychologist. I will put, obviously, all of the information in the description. She's a Jungian analyst, a she works with clinical psychology. And she has a recent book, and I'd like to talk about that right off. But first, let me say that she has written chapters in Jungian psychology books, and obviously, people who work in the field of research, journal articles in different journals. So let's talk about your book. The title is The Absent Father Effect on Daughters: Father Desire, Father Wounds. What is it about?
Well, it's about what we had mentioned when
Mm-hmm.
you and I were chatting just a bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And it relates back to something which really has kind of defined Jungian psychology. Well, a couple of things. One is the term archetype, which actually means many different things.
Well,
In
tell us
this,
what that
yeah,
means
yeah,
generally.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, right. And it fits with why it is an important topic and why now.
Mm-hmm.
So we could say that the archetype is kind of a way that we learn how to be. We're kind of born with a chip that says there's a father somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So we would say from the very beginning in our bodies and in our psyches, there's a desire for the father.
Mm-hmm.
If the father is not there, you feel it physically and psychologically. So the archetype is a physical, it's also psychological, and it's also transgenerational.
Wait, now that's an important concept. When
Yes,
we talk about archetypes, it is more or less, we could define it as a universally recognized image of something. How would you more specifically define it?
I think you said it very well. The specificity of it is how it comes out with each person,
Right. Give us an
right?
example.
Yeah, so here's an example. Um, Different people that I have worked with, it's not unusual, they have an absent father, which is kind of too bad. That is
Mm-hmm.
not unusual. How each person will react, there will be a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
You could almost say an archetypal reaction because there's a reaction to loss.
Mm-hmm.
Each one will respond differently.
Mm-hmm.
So some will respond with, they will turn against themselves in anger or rage. They will be defiant in society. They will have difficulty with relationships. Some will be highly creative
Mm-hmm.
with the absence and the loss. Some will find themselves as they go into the wounds,
Mm-hmm.
but they will all feel that there is something lacking.
Now,
And
when
that
just
lacking,
excuse me, hold
yeah,
on to that
yeah,
lacking. When you speak of going into the wounds, what
yeah.
exactly does that look like for you as a psychologist? What do you see in a
Yeah, yeah,
person?
yeah. Let me say as well. I would say as an analyst, I'm going into it. The difference is I would go into it, this is how I view it,
Mm-hmm.
in quite a deeper way. I want to see how the father image or how the hurt and the wound and the loss and lack come out in dreams, come
Okay.
out in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
come out in the therapy with me, how it, because it appears everywhere, the
Right.
lack. It's how one learns to deal with it. So it's not destructive, but constructive. So you go into it by going into
Mm-hmm.
yourself and realizing the things that were unconscious.
How destructive could things be when they come out? Destructive in terms of, I don't want to talk about suicide, but actually physically destructive, mentally? I mean, how could, what does it look like sometimes?
Yeah, I think that we could say until it comes out and
Mm-hmm.
is made conscious, it becomes destructive
Ah,
You see, so once it starts to come out, then the destruction is something that will not roll back inside in
right.
an
So it's
awful way.
fading in the background.
Right. I give you a little example.
Okay.
Okay, someone that this is not unusual, uh, but a little bit of an extreme.
Okay.
So somebody has just been in an abusive relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very frightening
All
to
right.
the point where that woman had to leave.
Mm-hmm.
As we began speaking about it, she put together that she was in an abusive and emotionally awful relationship
Mm-hmm.
besides physically abusive. She put it together. She said, "Well, my father was never there.
Mm.
He was never there." So, and also the mother or the
Right.
mother figure
Yeah.
didn't like the father and didn't like what was going on. So the mother carries in her mind how a partner should be, whether it's male or female.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have a very good feeling about it, passed on to the daughter. So the daughter then gets the father who wasn't there, the mother who is not dealing with her issues, comes onto the daughter, and this one didn't realize she had become anorexic,
Mm-hmm.
she was in a bad relationship,
Mm-hmm.
couldn't study in her PhD program. So it comes out in many different
Many different ways.
ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes,
Well,
yeah,
that I'm thinking of the other end of the spectrum because this is the absent father. Um, it it begs the question for me: what about when the father's there but
good.
seems absent? How different or how similar could that be?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you said that
Mm-hmm.
because when I refer to absence, I mean a physical absence and an emotional
Okay.
absence.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we look at culturally,
Mm-hmm.
many fathers get off the hook because they classically, through the generations, were the ones who provided the money,
Mm-hmm.
provided the shelter. That's all they had to do. End of story.
Mm-hmm.
Emotionally absent.
Yeah.
Many of them were tyrannical, didn't know how to love.
Yeah.
They didn't have fathers who knew how to love. Sigmund Freud had a father who didn't know how to love.
Mm-hmm.
So did Carl Jung have a father who
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how to love. And so it gets passed on and
Mm-hmm.
passed on. But again, the important thing is if the father is an unrelatable person,
Mm-hmm.
unrelatable, then what happens to the daughter?
Mm-hmm.
It's like she's trying and trying to relate to him. She can't, and it becomes automatically something's the matter with me.
Mm-hmm. Um, you just made me think of another question. Of course, every time you talk, I'm going to have. You in the book, and the title speaks of a daughter and a father. How different would that be if we have a son's father who's
Yeah,
absent? Have I'm asking myself, why? What brought you to write with that specificity, or will the next book deal with sons?
I don't know if the next one will, but I
Okay.
get that question. But I get that question very frequently,
Mm-hmm.
also from men.
Mm-hmm.
Um, why I focused on the daughters
Mm-hmm.
probably has something to do with the fact that I am a daughter,
Right, of course,
as
yeah.
well as several friends of mine
Mm-hmm.
have absent fathers,
Yeah.
absent emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
a variety of different absences. You could
Yeah.
say somebody who's alcoholic is also absent.
Yeah.
I have a lot of colleagues who also have that experience, and particularly in Jungian psychology, Jung had four daughters.
Mm-hmm.
He never spoke anything about daughters and fathers.
Mm.
He had some myths or symbols, but very little attention,
Mm-hmm.
and one essay on the father. Quite a bit on the mother,
Mm.
not much on the father. However, you asked another part which relates to the sons.
Mm-hmm.
In a very strange way, the sons suffer very similarly
Mm-hmm.
with destructive behavior. I think they enact it perhaps differently.
Mm-hmm.
Pornography,
Mm-hmm.
internet, internet porn,
Mm-hmm.
prostitutes, self-harm,
Mm-hmm.
alcohol, drugs. So it's enacted in similar areas,
Mm-hmm. But
but I think that
differently.
men and yeah, because men and women are raised still in quite diverse ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the little boy will get the gun when he's 1 day old, and the little girl will get the doll.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Still,
they
still.
still do get those things today.
I know.
Not much has
Yes.
changed. Yeah.
No, no, it hasn't. So I think that what we could say is what I'm trying to bring out is the importance of the father. And when you look at absence, then you can find presence, and you find what you want and you need, and you find the absence is there to fill. And
Yeah.
that's the positiveness, because you want to fill it, maybe not with an actual father, but with something inside of yourself
Mm-hmm.
that learns to value you.
Mm-hmm. This is, I mean, this we can create an entire um, book around just this little brief talk, but there's so much that I want to ask you. If you maybe we can come back to the book, but I'd like to move a little bit because on the topics that you have mentioned that um, you could talk about it, where your expertise extends over these, is
Yes.
something that um, you call the body image. And why I'm picking this out is that
Mhm.
I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner, Feldenkrais method
Oh, I
practitioner,
know.
works with uh, part of the interesting side to the method is the image of the self is redefined. The person gets a positive image of themselves, and it's fascinating.
Yes.
Can
Yes.
you mention? I mean, you were nodding your head. I was so surprised you even heard of the Feldenkrais method.
Of course. Of
Hmm.
course.
Hmm.
You know, one of the things that I have found, not just me,
Hmm.
but I think it's being filled in more than it
Hmm.
was, is the focus on the body.
Yes.
So oftentimes people come into therapy and they think it's a head trip.
Yeah.
No, it's an entire being
Yeah.
trip. Even as you said, it's like a realignment of the physical and the psychological self.
Hmm.
So I notice that people will start, as they start to find themselves, they will be
Their body
more
changes.
balanced,
Yeah.
yes, and they will learn to care for their bodies.
Hmm.
Embodiment is something that is more and more in the analytical field being paid attention to,
Well, how did
and it
that come
needs to be.
about? How did that come about? That you said that's more and more
So
being.
yeah, I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
wonder, yeah, I wonder if the whole analytical from the beginning of the 20th century was quite male dominated.
Yes.
In the mid to later 20th century,
Hmm.
the movement of women,
Hmm.
feminism, bringing in the feminine, whatever that means, however we define it,
Hmm.
that is oftentimes related to the body. Not that masculine is not related to the body,
Yeah.
but I think that one sidedness
Hmm.
of this male focus
Yeah.
has shifted and brought us, you could say, back to earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is interesting. There was something called working with the archetypes, there was something called the goddess movement for many years, and I believe it was the 70s. And
Yes.
it wasn't
Yes.
really religious based or spirituality based. And that started a new movement. Unfortunately, didn't go very far, but um, that didn't, I don't believe it aided much in terms of a self image for the female.
No.
And to this day, there's still so much confusion about what a body is. You know, that people even know what a soul is more than what their own body is. You know, and I'm so fascinated because I too, you know, realize that we have eyes in the front of our head, and since I cannot see my back unless I look at it in the mirror, I can turn. I'm really not that sensitive to it. I'm not fully aware of where the spinal cord, how it moves and what is there. Of course, you have to study it. And when you become aware of the parts that you have, the movement then just becomes it just phenomenally eases up tension everywhere, and you start moving like an animal that we should follow in their footsteps. But when people come, let's say, talking about the image again, the self-image, um, let me ask you about your practice. When someone comes to you, let's say they come to you because they find you somewhere, or they were friends of a client who comes to you. Usually, I've found with all of I've found that it's more word of mouth always. But when somebody comes to you and they come with a little idea, they may even not know what they need or what their problem is. How is your intake usually? Does it vary, or do you have sort of a set way that you assess people or talk to them, or how does that work?
Well, actually, so I want to go back to what you had said about the body
Mm-hmm.
and your quite picturesque description of the body, because it actually is the way the psyche comes together.
Mm-hmm.
So you could think of the back as the unconscious,
Right.
all the other body parts as different parts of the personality that maybe got disjointed,
Mm-hmm.
not known, hidden, ignored.
Right.
And the whole process is exactly what you described, bringing the body and the psyche, so their personality, together, and bringing consciousness to your body as well. And then going on to what you had said, I really don't have a particular intake thing or a regular whatever. This is just me. I just go, where are you and what do you want?
Okay.
And
Right, directly.
how will we, very direct.
Very
Yes,
direct.
yes.
And do you find that people are, they easily tell you what they need and what they want? I mean, they're open about it, or is it like pulling teeth from, some people may not be ready to talk? Do you find that sometimes?
Yes, yes. I think it's an entire range. I
Mm-hmm.
would also say that, interestingly enough, some people lie in therapy. So
Ah,
they pay to lie. They pay to lie.
isn't that
And
fascinating?
it is.
Is it,
It is.
this reminds me when I was getting my PhD and I had my subjects, and my supervisor said, "Well, you're going to be experimenting, right?" I said, "Yeah." And the qualitative side, I would have to give them, I gave them questionnaires and they would talk about their work, right? And I said, well, what if they just tell me whatever they want? They're speaking about their work and they're assessing their own work. What about if it's just one-sided, isn't it? And he said, well, that would be relevant, wouldn't it? It would be relevant. But how can you pick it out
How can I pick out what?
when people are lying?
Well, okay. So here we come back to, how are the signals,
Yes.
how does the analyst use the signals of themselves to help somebody figure out themselves? So here we come to embodiment as well. A
Okay.
lot of people pick up in their body. They get, oh, I
Oh, the
feel
shoulder.
this stomach. They feel it, the atmosphere. The person comes in, you can just kind of tell.
Hmm.
There's another way you can tell. You're bored. So they're hiding under the
Of
boredom.
course.
Yeah, I want to go to sleep. I'm bored. So I will say, what are you not saying? What are you not saying?
Yeah.
And why are you not saying it? Because I don't think it helps to continue to deny what somebody comes in and is having trouble saying.
Hmm.
They have to say it. You have to be vulnerable in order to heal the wounds. But we all need encouragement.
Of course.
So
Of
I don't
course.
want people to get away with lying in therapy.
Well, that's interesting. I would have never thought that. And it's interesting that you just came right out with it, because I wouldn't think that that would be so prominent a practice. I wouldn't think that people would lie.
Um,
If they came to
well,
you through
we
their own free will because they weren't
right.
forced to.
Well, a lot of people learn to hide, and they learn from very early to hide the truth of themselves. And so, whoever or wherever they're at, they're always a little worried. I can't reveal myself.
Hmm.
I can't be who I am. You'll reject me. You
Yeah.
will, you'll
Hmm.
be like the
Yeah.
parents were. You'll be like the bullies were in school. So there, it's kind of in there. Through the process, they learn differently. But unless you face it, you don't learn anything else.
So it's coming out. What's emerging in this talk is that, all right, we started with the absent father and the daughter, and how that could affect her. There's a wide spectrum of ways, and then we talked about the body image, and I'm thinking that they are really linked in the sense that improving somebody's uh, image of themselves would be therapeutic in some way in relation to why they come to you. Typically, even for anything, I would imagine, or no. Uh,
Oh,
is
yes, no, it all goes together.
hmm.
We're all body, mind, and soul. So
Hmm.
that when something is off in one place, it's going to be off someplace else.
Hmm.
And so if we not correct, but put together
Hmm.
the pieces of ourselves, our physical self will improve as well.
Hmm.
I've seen it over and over again. But people have to do it in relationship because that's where the problems began,
What do you mean
was
by that?
in relationship. Hmm?
People, what do you mean by people have to do it in
Oh,
relationship? In
yep,
relationship
yep.
to themselves, to you, to who?
To, to all of those that you said,
Uh-huh.
because the wounds begin not alone.
Hmm.
They begin very early
Hmm.
in relationship to the caregivers, the
Yeah.
parents, whoever
Hmm.
they are. Things go off. How that gets corrected
Hmm.
is by being in a, what would you call it, a therapeutic relationship.
Hmm.
Not perfect, one with flaws as well, but a place where people feel they could safely discuss what's going on inside of themselves. By
Hmm.
knowing they can do that, they gain a sense of solidity, also care of their body, and also care of their psyche. They
Hmm.
learn to pay attention to what's going on. What is amazing to me is how many people have just synchronistic thoughts, they have these intuitive feelings,
Give me an
and they
example
don't.
of that.
I'll give you an example of one that just happened 2 hours ago.
Uh-huh.
I was speaking with someone who said, I have this really uncomfortable feeling that something's going to happen at work.
Hmm.
And so we talked about, well, what's going to happen? Well, really, this job is not fulfilling me. I could do it. I'm not happy here. My creativity is not being developed. And a few minutes after we ended the session, which doesn't usually happen, this person texted me and said, I got fired. So they into
Yeah.
it's a stark example,
Yeah.
but intuitively we talked about it because this person knew something was off.
Hmm.
And we could talk about, okay, it's off, but you don't like it anyhow. Maybe there is an opening here. Maybe your intuition is leading you in the
Right.
right direction.
How fascinating. And so let's
Yep.
take
Just
this case just a moment. So you just spoke to the person. Was it male or female?
mhm, the man.
A man. So the man will come back to you, I suppose, and for
The
another
man has
session.
come back for on and off for a long time.
Okay,
Yes.
so he will be coming back after this
Yeah.
happened, right? And so
Yeah.
in reality, to me, as you were explaining it, it seems like such a breakthrough. And it could be
Yeah.
spinned either or. a number of ways, because the person is probably feeling confused, to say the least, but may be able to be maybe possible. It might be possible for him to see it as a positive development.
That's what we exactly. That's what we talked about. So I
Mm-hmm.
think again, it's like it's not finding lemonade out of all the lemons because that
Mm-hmm.
would be denying the shock and grief and
Right,
everything.
right.
But it's also saying maybe this has happened for a reason.
A
You
reason.
want to follow your psyche, and your psyche will help you follow your body, and that will help you develop relationships, and they all come together.
Okay, now we're on something new. Um, when you say psyche, it has a very specific meaning, and perhaps I keep asking you for definitions, but it's important for listeners. Could you tell us a bit?
Well, yes. So in Jungian psychology, when I refer to psyche, I actually mean conscious and unconscious aspects of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, to me, it's like a large picture
Mm-hmm.
in which I am.
Mm-hmm.
So there's conscious and unconscious parts of me. And psyche, the word psyche, is from the Greek, and it means butterfly, and the butterfly is transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's a beautiful word.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we go back to the body and relationships, because the word relationship keeps coming up, and we don't live without relationships, do we? Um,
Yeah.
but there is, okay, you talk about relationship intimacy. Now, this is going one step further into a closeness of a relationship. And when you
Yes.
talk of intimacy, is that in relation to how difficult it is for one person to come close to someone else? Or what do you mean by the intimacy of it? Is it physical, emotional, all forms of intimacy with another person?
Yes. Yes. I think it's all forms, but the intimacy is not just how close we get to somebody else. It's also how close we get to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's a huge amount of honesty and an ability to accept the pieces that aren't so gorgeous, the parts that nobody really likes and wish they didn't have, but they have them. It's not just a blind acceptance. It's like knowing this is what defines me. Intimacy is the uniqueness of who I am, and I am going to be my unique self with somebody else. Again, it's not 100% acceptance, nor is it 100% acceptance of oneself, but the ability to be open. You know, the use of the word wound was on purpose because it actually does mean that you open the space,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it heals. So if you open yourself to yourself and to somebody else, that's intimacy as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one thing in there too, and that's one of the things I think that people can learn in therapy as well. Many ways they can learn it. They would learn it in body movement, how to be really knowing of where your body is, how to position yourself. It's very parallel.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Go ahead.
yeah. One thing I wanted to say,
Go.
in addition to the body work that you do as
Mm-hmm.
well, there's something about not rushing through.
Yes. Yes. You're talking to a very fast person here. I do everything fast. And it was not by chance that I moved toward this discipline, because it has brought me to understand many things. Many things. Yeah.
Well, I would agree with you. I would agree with you. And I would say also that through COVID, many people that I see have said, I'm so glad, not for COVID, but now I can't rush around. I can't go all over the place. I have to stop. I just spoke to somebody yesterday as well who said the very thing you just said.
Mhm.
I always want fast, 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 and I know that these lessons are I've got to slow down.
Slow down. They're slow down. And I'll say something more. I was just telling my tango teacher, I dance Argentine tango, and he was saying to me, you really have rhythm, and you're really good with the fast fast versions of tango, the longa style or the waltz style. But he says when there's that melody, the melodic, he said, that's where you have trouble. I said, I know, it's so slow, it scares me. You know, you're, the slowness of it, and the rubbing and all of that. I start. It's something I have to get rid of. But the Feldenkrais is
Well,
having my
it's
dancing.
something it's something you want to integrate. But
Yeah.
why I also said slow is that really is the analytic process.
Oh, yes, of
You don't
course.
do it in 6 sessions.
And you
You
don't do
do
it
it
fast.
over time.
Hmm.
It's a constant reflection, looking, examining, not negatively, but
Hmm.
so you expand all the time. It's like your tango teacher said,
Yeah, yeah,
expand here
yeah,
and it will add to your dance.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
really gorgeous,
Yeah, it's
actually.
fascinating, though. It's fascinating. Um, Wait, but there's so much here, and I'll go on to another topic because you mentioned the repair to the personality. And now,
Yeah.
before my mind started imagining, I don't want to say anything because it's important to understand, because that means to me that it's possibly that a personality is flawed and it could be repaired. What does that mean?
Yes, good question again.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Japanese art of kensagi? I
Yes,
think
I've
it's
read about it.
kin.
Uh-huh.
Okay, it's the same thing. The pot breaks, and all the pieces are there. You put them together with gold.
Hmm.
So what you have created out of the exact same uh, pot is a different pot. The repair is to the wounded areas, to the cracks. You will always be able to see them, but now they have a different form to them. It's also in alchemy. It's kind of an
Hmm.
old
Yes.
medieval science where you cook things inside of the pot.
Hmm.
You have got all the ingredients,
Yeah.
put
And you
them
make
together,
magic. That's when magic comes out.
and that also is the analytic process.
Hmm.
Same thing. That's the repair. It's not that you're not going to
Flawed. Hmm.
remember
Hmm.
the hard times or carry difficulties, but you see them and they are kind of healed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
that they get totally healed, but they're healed enough.
um,
Maybe to become creative as
hmm.
well. Mhm.
There's another thing that, well, I'm one of those people who journal and keep my pen and paper next to the bed, because when I wake up, I write the dream right away, and yeah, all the time. And you mentioned the value of the unconscious to conscious life. And maybe we could talk about that a little bit, because I've been having some weird dreams lately and
Yeah, but
repetitive dreams.
have you really?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So I think all dreams are important.
Hmm.
And I think not just me, one of the easiest ways to get in touch with what's going on in the unconscious is the dream world
Right.
and journaling and
Hmm.
how you feel about it. When the dreams repeat, I always think it's interesting that
Hmm.
you have to repeat themes,
Hmm. Yeah.
repeat
Yeah.
figures, repeat scenarios,
Hmm.
and then it's like, why is it coming back?
Yeah.
What is not yet resolved? What is calling to you to look at it again?
Yeah.
And why now? Okay.
Yeah.
So why today? And then why 3 months ago? What was
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're signaling to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you listen and you listen.
Yeah. It's funny because the first thing I think of when I look at the dream and I see the characters, the people who are there, and the places that I go to and who's there, I think, oh, well, that was because I watched that television series, or that was because I did that, and it could be some little tiny piece, but the craziness of the dream world is so bizarre and fascinating.
Well, the dream chose the character in the YouTube video or the whatever
Right.
because that character
Yeah, of
resonates
course.
inside.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why it does that. And actually it's helpful
Oh,
because
yeah.
you just saw it outside and now you go, "Oh, right, I have that in me."
Hmm.
So I figure that they are incredibly helpful. Even the dreams that I might, when I myself
Hmm.
can't stand, I know those figures. I go, "Oh my goodness, why is this one back again?" But then I get to figure out why.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
get to figure out why.
Um,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
does. Could a Jungian analyst think that there could be premonitory dreams,
Oh yes.
premonitions? I mean, is that something alien to? Yeah,
No, no. The problem is that you only know it after the
of
fact.
course, of
So
course.
many people have to. It's not unusual. They have a dream. So and so was in a crash, or so and so was hurt,
Hmm.
or something happened. And I always say, you know what? Do you think you should contact them? So pay attention to the reality of the dream.
Hmm.
It's symbolic, but it's also maybe it's telling you pay attention. But
Hmm.
you see, you
You
in
don't know
some
until it
people,
happens. Hmm.
no. But some people, the veil between the conscious and the unconscious is much thinner.
Hmm.
And the amount of people who dream about disaster before it
Yeah,
happens,
it's quite a few.
it's not unusual.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let's say
Yeah.
that, because in my practice as a psychic, and I work with a lot of different things, and I have to say that what I've come across with the people that I work with, a good part are premonition, but then there is the fact of you in resonates with you because it's a different, it could be how Jung would classify the dream world as, and bring it up to our ideas, our minds after we wake up, would teach us many things that are unresolved. But I have those two, the premonitions and the working out our issues in our subconscious. I'm But there is a third that I can't bring to mind now, that is also that dreams help. Is Does that make any sense? Is there anything in your practice that relates to some other form, or some need, or something that dreams can correspond to? Because
Um,
my experiences with premonition and the personal, emotional, and physical issues that come up.
yeah. So I think what you're talking about in a way is the collective unconscious
Yeah.
and the personal unconscious.
Okay.
And they both are valuable. Some people have more access to the collective
Yeah.
unconscious. You can tell that in their dreams. Some people have more access. They focus on going to the market. Looks
Mm-hmm.
like the personal unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
All of them contain symbols,
Mm-hmm.
and those symbols are ages old.
Mm-hmm.
Jung had many dreams, premonition of World War I. He had lots of, it would be like the veil between the
Mm-hmm.
conscious and the unconscious was pretty thin. I think the point is how somebody handles it
Yeah.
and really takes it seriously and listens to the warning that is in it. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think some dreams really are warning dreams.
Yeah.
And they're alerting us
Mm-hmm.
to something not just personal, but
Right.
really also collective.
Something
Yeah.
that we're picking up, um, that our psyche is picking up. Maybe,
Yeah.
am I using that word right there? That our psyche is picking up.
You are, but you already said that you're a psychic.
Yeah.
So you pick up
Yeah.
all these layers
Yeah.
that are around us that are meaningful, we want to value. Too often, here's the problem with going too fast. Too often
I know.
people just go by.
Yeah.
They forget that that has meaning right there, you
Yes
know,
and
and
no.
we
Yeah.
need to pay attention.
Well, there's
Yeah.
another side to the coin of being psychic because there's so much out there that you really have to prioritize. I mean, I couldn't go to the supermarket and do my food shopping if I have to worry about all the things that are around me. I just have to concentrate because there's just so much around, especially since COVID, believe me. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. But I think part also of putting one's, so you can manage all of that.
Yeah.
You know about all those
Hmm.
energies. Some people really need to learn to manage
Yes.
it.
Yes. And
Yeah, because
where does it start? How do they learn to start managing it? Because so many people come to me and there, I don't know where to start sometimes because I'm not a person who is coaching. I will not coach people who want to do mediumship. I do mediumship and channeling. I don't coach people to do that because it's beyond my, you can't do 1,000 things, so you could just, but you say that people have to learn to do that, but it starts from what their spiritual beliefs are, and oftentimes they're you don't know where they start with their spiritual beliefs or their religious beliefs, and they say, they for example, um, a person would say, I woke up and I saw my grandfather, who is deceased, sitting on the edge of my bed. He was there.
yeah,
He was there, right?
yeah, that's right.
And so this person was so frightened because it reoccurred and it reoccurred, and they didn't have set in their mind exactly what the afterlife could be, if there were past lives, what happens to us when. And so there was a lot of confusion in what a soul is and what the soul
Mm.
does, where it goes, and so when you talk about they have to learn to manage that, my first instinct was thinking that people will literally they'll be insane, considered insane, if they have to deal with all of the energies around them. If I don't know if that's where you were going with that.
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no. It's more to manage the energy that a lot of other people don't acknowledge and know. So the one who saw, for instance, a grandfather on the, yes, of course that grandfather was there, but to give some kind of message. So
Hmm.
oftentimes people in Jungian work dialogue with different figures.
Hmm.
The really, what are you doing here? What's happening? Dream figures, figures like that. Um,
You mean
I think what you
you have your client, your patient, go dialogue? Okay.
dialogue,
Okay.
dialogue. I mean,
Hmm.
it's like you've got a journal,
Hmm.
so dialogue with that
Right.
person, see what they want to say to
Right.
you.
Right.
Use the energy in a certain sense, concretize it.
Right.
Don't be afraid of it,
Hmm.
but also that is a person who needs to learn how to have their personality solid enough
Yes.
to be able to do that. So they
Dialogue.
would, yeah, and that would be the beginning. Feel more solid inside yourself because the grandfather is coming for reasons.
Yeah. It's
Hmm.
fascinating. And we
It
could
is.
go
It is.
on and on and on, Susan, I know. But
I
all
know.
things come to an end. All good things
Yes.
do anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you
That's true.
so. And I do hope in the future we can cross paths again and have another chat, because it would be,
I
we're just touching the surface here.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
It's also interesting how. So this is the whole synchronicity.
Hmm.
How it was that I contacted you, you contacted me back.
Yeah.
Uh, other side of the world,
Yeah.
not knowing,
Yeah.
right? And so we could say why and what has it brought about?
Yeah.
Well, we hope it has brought about some excellent things and
And
some
some
learning as
clarity
well.
and learning experience.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Thanks
yes.
again for coming, Susan. I hope you
Thank
will be
you.
back on our show.
I
Bye
do too.
bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.